Morning, all. So, news of the day video today to round things out as everybody's confirmed their rosters and we're set. And players being thrown on long term injured reserve. Nobody we didn't know was going on long term injured reserve. So, we'll start off with a couple of signings from today, starting with the Capitals, who have signed Craig Anderson. Craig Anderson also on waivers. They're going to have him on the taxi squad. So, for Anderson, we'll see. He should clear. I don't see any reason he shouldn't clear. And it's a good addition for the Washington Capitals. Really a smart signing. And Cap. So, yeah, Anderson waived by the Capitals, and he's back for, I would think, probably his last season. But we'll see what happens, right? Devin Shore has signed a 1-year, 2-way contract with the Oilers. At the NHL level, he would make $700,000. But he is also on waivers and likely headed to the taxi squad. So this is teams picking up depth, throwing those depth guys on the taxi squad, and we're going to have to get used to that for this season. It's going to be strange. But yeah, so Devin Shore, Craig Anderson, examples of guys who are veterans, who can step into the lineup, who if something happens and there's an outbreak, they can be put into the lineup and it shouldn't negatively impact you as much as it would otherwise. The Anaheim Ducks raising some eyebrows with Zegras and Drysdale starting in the AHL. They both were assigned to San Diego. This is the thing. When you've got kids coming into their potentially first full training camp or they're younger, some of them aren't always ready. And so, and it may very well be a matter of the Ducks saying, we're aware of where we're going to be. We don't want these kids to play in an environment where they may not play enough, so they may want them to play a lot more in the AHL than they would in the NHL. Keith Yandle. So we're coming back to this article of the day because, again, the last time I talked about Keith Yandle, there were people who said, look, Yandle's going to play for Florida because they just don't have enough defense. Since we had that discussion, they've picked up a couple on waivers. And it's really pretty clear when you look at how their lineup is set up. Yandle is very likely to be a healthy scratch. And there's a consideration that they may just make him a healthy scratch on opening night, just to get it out of the way. Because, of course, he has a games played streak of 866 games, which is about 11 years. So it is a tough position for a team to be in. And I've always thought this with some of these Ironman streaks, that it ends up being more problematic for the team than one might think, where you don't want to be the bad guy and make a healthy scratch out of somebody. But I remember last year, too, when we were talking about Florida's blue line, and we talked about Yandle and Ekblad, and there were a lot of comments about how, well, which one's playing defense? And yes, stats people will tell you, hey, no, Ekblad's good on the defensive side. Clearly with Yandle, there's something they're not a big fan of with his game, and he's on the outs. So if there's anyone that wants to pick him up and trade, I would think call Bill Zito, because Florida's probably taking calls on Yandle. And yeah, it does look like he's probably going to end up being a healthy scratch. They see some upside with Noah Juleson. They've already said that. They're not unrealistic about it, but they do think that Juleson could be a solid addition for them. And yeah, so Florida's got plans, and it doesn't look like Yandle's going to end up being in them. Ville Heinola is amongst those headed to the AHL. And Matthew Perreault, after clearing waivers, is now on the taxi squad. So that's an unusual move that in any normal season I don't think we'd see happening, but here we are. Perreault on the taxi squad, Heinola being sent down, tells you that they're happy with their blue line. I actually see this more as a positive for the team than a negative with Heinola. And again, same as in the case of the two rookies for Anaheim, they're going to come up and play at some point this year. It's just they're starting the year in the AHL. And considering you don't have to put them on waivers, that's also part of the reason why we end up seeing rookies go down, is you don't have to worry about losing them at all. Casey Middlestadt is on the taxi squad for the Buffalo Sabres. So, again, we've had this debate for a while about Middlestadt, and I don't see that there's a lot of NHL top six upside there. And at this stage, if he doesn't qualify for their roster, he doesn't make the roster, then I don't know when you get into bust territory. Because I've seen a couple of fantasy projections for Middlestadt, and both of them said the same thing. You can't call him a bust yet. The fact that the word yet was in that sentence meant, well, I think we're getting into the region, though, aren't we? We're in the neighborhood of. We're maybe walking up the driveway of. And so for Middlestadt being on the taxi squad, I would think that he would also be available in trade at some stage. So if he's not already. So for Middlestadt, it's got to be a frustrating start, because if you're on the taxi squad, the one thing about that is it's kind of the nowhere zone. You're not playing NHL games. You're not playing AHL games. You can't really, if you want to be traded off of a team's roster, you want to prove that you can be good somewhere else. The taxi squad is hell because you're not playing at all. So, yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with Middlestadt and if he ends up staying there, if they send him down. Of course, the other side of this is if you're on the taxi squad, it means you're one of the guys that they want to be the first call-ups, right? Dylan Larkin, it became official today. He has been named captain of the Detroit Red Wings. He's their 37th captain. And, yeah, we saw this coming. We knew this was going to happen. I already did a career video on Larkin. And it is the least well-kept secret around sports, I would think, is Larkin was going to be center. I think it was Dick's Sporting Goods that accidentally leaked that, where they had a jersey that had Larkin with the C. So, yeah, there you go. For Dallas, some rough news here where 17 players tested positive, and they're saying most of them asymptomatic and you know, getting better. And, yeah, I have to wonder what was going on there, what protocols were being broken, that 17 players ended up testing positive. Or just, you know, if they're living in that area, the numbers have been really high. So, you know, you can look at it either way. But 17 players tested positive of 27 total positive tests. Which I think considering, and again, I know people are going to say, oh, that's so much. And the shut it down people are, you know, going to have a field day for the next 116 days. And then they'll start again when the playoffs get going. But the reality is, if there's 27 players who've tested positive league-wide, that's not a high number considering they were amongst the general population of the world and they've been everywhere. And so I think I take that as more of an encouragement than anything else, that there was just that many over the process of getting through training camp and coming back to training camp. So here's to hoping they keep that number as low as possible. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to. But let's hope they keep that down to a minimum. So yeah, 27 altogether. And of course, Vancouver fans yesterday had their panic. I figure I didn't do a video on this yesterday because I figured, you know, they're already panicking. They don't need my help. JT Miller and Jordy Ben will be out a couple of weeks due to COVID exposure. It doesn't sound like they actually tested positive, just due to exposure rules being as they are. They're in quarantine. So, yeah, and you know, it's a tough break for Vancouver, but it means somebody else has to jump onto that JT Miller line. And we'll see how the Canucks end up navigating the next couple of weeks. He could miss up to 8 games, but we'll see. And of course, Hamonic signed for $1.25 million yesterday. That became official. So the interesting part of this is that Jordy Ben likely was defenseman number 7 anyways. So Ben was not projected to be on the opening night roster. Hamonic would have been taking his spot. So for the Canucks, I mean, if it's Miller and Ben, that sucks. But, you know, you roll with it. We're going to see every team go through something like this year. And if the Canucks can't absorb the loss of one top 6 player, that's not going to bode well in the North Division. That could also see a lot of guys getting hurt. We could see a lot of injuries right out of the gate, and the teams that are really physical could wreak havoc on other teams in the division, especially with the way this is set up, that every game is going to be part of a series. You basically don't have very many games where you're just playing a team once and then you move on to the next team. It's going to be at least 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 or 5 times in a row that you're going to see the same team. So, all right, you guys are all set for today, I do believe. I'll do another news video if I need to later. Keep in mind, hockey starts relatively early today, so it might be one of those between the periods kind of things if we do get more that happens today. But, yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. And, yes, if you have a Larkin jersey, you can now affix a C to it. And if you've been wondering which Detroit reverse retro you're going to get, because they're all so fantastic, then you can throw Larkin and a C on it. There you go. All right. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, which a lot of people have been doing. The channel's gained approximately 500 subscribers in the last 2 days. So, yeah, kind of crazy. And that means one thing. Hockey's back. I'm into the kind of numbers I haven't seen on this channel in over a year. So it's kind of shocking. And yet I look back at the numbers the channel was getting in terms of adding subscribers and view numbers, and I'm like, no, that works out. It's still shocking though. So thank you guys for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. And hey, I will talk to you guys again very soon, because as you can see, I now have all of them. I'll talk to you again soon.